Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Autopilot on podcast. Bringing our March episode out here for you. We were able to get our schedules to line up. How you doing, John?
I'm doing good, man. Busy, busy, busy. Spring break
Yeah.
time.
Shoot. Yeah, you're right. It is spring break.
Yeah, right. I mean, we'll be in
Yeah.
summer here in like a month, so it's been
Yeah.
it's been pretty
Well,
crazy.
friggin' feels like so. How hot is it in
It's
Hotlanta?
80. It's
Yeah, it's
80 right
getting there.
now in
You getting
Hotlanta.
storms yet?
Yeah, obviously we'll talk about it here in a sec, but yeah, we're starting to get those transitional storms with those low air pressures coming in with some really moist air. So it's been pretty crazy. Whether it's 3 feet of snow in Minneapolis or 106 degrees in Phoenix. I mean, I don't know, man. This weather's been pretty crazy in the last like say 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's definitely, if you look at like the weather trends over the past couple decades, every 7 to 10 years we get this they call it the Aleutian blocking pattern, where you get this high up in the Aleutians that turns the west, basically from the continental divide west, into a dry hot, you know,
Bubble, basically.
bubble. Yeah, it's basically a hot bubble. And then the north and east part of the country get hit with the polar weather that gets shoved down around that thing. And so we started off back in like November and December. That's why the west had such a dry, outside of the Sierras, had such a dry winter. And now we're dealing with another Aleutian block system. It's not helpful for the droughts out here, I'll tell you that. We've had fires already out here.
I heard
Yesterday there was,
Wyoming's an issue with it, right? There's really
well,
bad.
Nebraska had the big fires that took
Did it?
off last
Okay.
week. Yeah, it was crazy. I was talking to somebody yesterday in town, and she was telling me that one of the fires moved 14 miles in 10 minutes.
My
Yeah,
God.
the wind, because the winds were howling. We had some last week.
Wow.
We had in the town just south of me, they recorded 106-mile-an-hour winds. It was kicking hard the last couple weeks. So, for Wyoming standards. But we wanted to talk about, there's a lot of weather interruptions and delays going on around the country right now. Coupling that with the government shutdown that's going on and the TSA delays, flight delays, operational meltdowns at multiple airlines. It's been a frustrating start to the spring,
Yeah.
late winter, early spring. It's very easy to let that get the best of you. Losing your cool in those situations is really easy with the amount of frustrations. So, talking about how to deal with that, not so much the frustrations of it, but, ways to like work through it, because you can't change it.
No.
If the system's melting down, there's nothing there's a storm in New York, the entire country's wrecked, right?
You're just along
And
for the ride, man.
exactly. And so how do you make the best of a crappy day?
Yeah.
I think that's the best way to go about this. It's just more of a discussion on how to deal with your emotions and operational challenges. I think that's a good topic for us to cover today.
Yeah. 100%. I think the last time I felt like really bad operational stuff was right at the end of the year and New Year. And I was working a ton and
Oh yeah.
I was consistently getting just hit with delays stacking every single day. And it would give me like 10 hours in base, basically between my pairings. And so it was just stacking every single day where I'm barely legal for everything consecutively. And it just became so frustrating where it was not maybe an operational meltdown, but it was a mini meltdown that would
Hmm.
leave me barely legal and that would
Right.
stack. And
Right.
it's really hard to keep your cool after it consistently happens, like after day 3 or 4 of that happening.
Get that cumulative fatigue. Yes.
Oh yeah, it's a real thing, 100%. And I think when things really go off the deep end, like it is now or last week, I think there's a couple good tips I have. And I don't know if you want to take it this way, but I think the number one thing that I recommend people do is to make sure your blood sugar is okay, meaning
Yes.
literally just have a
Eat.
real meal. So if you're stacked on delays and you're doing a turn somewhere or whatever, if you need to delay the flight to get a real meal, then do it. I mean, not everyone is bougie that has the legacy meals catered for them. So I'm not going to eat a cheese tray to satisfy me for an 8 hour Puerto Vallarta turn. No,
Right.
I'm not going to do it. And
Right.
so, the airlines will figure out if you want to stack those things. And I will gladly put in the delay report that I needed to go get food because it's unrealistic for someone to just snack for the entire day for, I don't know, for 12 hours or 16-hour duty day. So that's my number one thing, is because you're not going to be able to keep your emotions in check if your blood sugar is not regulated. And
Yeah.
also, it's a safety concern as well in that sense. So that's my number one tip. But I'm curious, you can go ahead with whatever you think
No.
next.
No, you're good. Hangry is a big problem. For me, I think I've harped on this here before, but, like, meal prep, that's what I do.
Yeah.
It's just it because the problem with the airports, unless you know the food courts in the airports you're gonna be in, you don't know what kinda options will be available, and then even if you know them, maybe they're out of whatever you're gonna get, right? And
Yeah.
now your
Totally.
only options are Chick-fil-A or, fast food something, which is
Horrible
really
for
not
you.
great. Yeah, exactly. Sure, it's filling and it's something, but it's not
Giving
ideal.
you the energy that you are required. Yeah.
Right, you're getting yourself full of high salt and sugar and oils, and you're just gonna sit there bloated feeling like crap all afternoon on top of being frustrated by the operational stuff. So, yeah, food's a big factor in that. Understanding the fact that, you know, you can't change it is a big part of it too. Just accepting like, okay, well, this is the situation we're facing. We're here now. We got to work through it, right? It's like you have I know this is a simple comparison, but you get an engine fire or something. You're not going to sit there and bitch and moan about, "Oh, why did we get the engine fire and so doesn't get it?" Like
Right.
you're going to work through it and get the job done and get safely back on the ground, right? So, same kind of concept. I know it's easier said than done, and it does take practice and intentional focus to get yourself into a mindset where but I'll be working with a guy who just every little thing will get him wrapped up around the axle and snapped. And I'll just be sitting there like, "Why are you getting so mad, dude? Like, we gotta wait now. There's a delay."
Can we talk about that for a second? Because that was
Sure.
gonna be my next recommendation, is don't be that guy. Don't be the guy that, like, loses his and is really difficult to work with, because you drag down the entire cabin crew in that sense. So what I wanna kinda go through is, how do you deal with someone who is acting like that during this kinda chaos? And if, let's say, it's a 4-day trip. How do you deal with someone like that? Like, do you bring it up and say, "Hey, man, like, can you check yourself?" Or do you just kind of separate and try to do it like, be on your own? Because each one kind of presents its own challenges. And if anything, it's just more frustrating and makes the days go way harder if you don't say anything and you just kind of sit with that
Yeah.
person, just that energy in that flight deck. I hate
Right.
that feeling.
Yes. It's toxic. There's different ways to approach it, and it kinda depends on the person you're dealing with, right? If you know the person and you know they're just having a day and you know they can take the direct criticism, sometimes telling them, "Hey, you're being a dick. You need to chill out." If you know they can handle it, great. And I've flown with a bunch of guys like that where after flying with them for a few days, I get the vibe, I get to feel what they're how they deal with direct confrontation, and if they're able to handle it, then I tell them, "Hey, dude, I think you need to take a deep breath," or getting a little more wound up than you should about this. If I know the guy and he's good, then he'll be like, "Oh, really? Am I?" And you're like, "Yeah," and he'll be like, "Oh, okay, sorry," right? But there's some guys you cannot do that with because now
They'll
you're
lose
the
it.
asshole. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so with those guys, or if it's somebody I don't know if they can handle it and I deal with this situation, the way I approach it is, I try to like redirect the energy and be like, yeah, man, sucks, but hey, guess what? You know, at least we're getting paid. At least we fly we fly this brand new airplane, you know, shit. And then the biggest help, if it's a delay and we don't have trip rig, I pull out the
Getting
cash
paid
clock
more.
app. I
Yeah.
pull out the cash clock app. I put it on the freaking on right in front of the console there and let it run while we're sitting there on the ground. And they just keep glancing over it and you can feel the heat just drop in the cockpit. Cause they're like, "Oh yeah, wow, we just made that much money."
That's
Like
a
from
nice steak dinner for
sitting,
those
dude.
captains.
It's the best. thing, like, because I used to use it just for me at the beginning when I would get wrapped out around the axle about it, and I was like, "Oh, it's not so bad. I just made enough money to buy a sweet dinner or something," right? That one helps. Just like little tricks like that, and you'll learn your own over time. But, like just redirecting why they're angry, what they're angry at, right? Like, if they're angry about the operation, or why do we have the delays? And it's like, well, could be worse, man. Like I always say it could be worse. We could be sitting in a CRJ 200,
with the
you
in-op
know,
APU
with an in-op APU
in
in,
Podunk,
in a
Michigan.
hot, humid podunk town with no services, making 20 grand a year.
And
And
if
they're
that's you, I'm sorry. It can
Yeah,
always get
no, yeah,
worse.
we're not, yeah, yeah. Hey, man, if you're doing it, more power to you, because eventually you'll
Right.
get where you want to be because you're doing
Sure.
that, and I
Exactly.
applaud you for it. But it's a relative thing. But hey, guess what? If you're sitting in that CRG in that situation, it could be worse. You could be sitting in a Cessna 172 with students trying to kill you in Phoenix when it's 120 degrees outside and you're in the pattern.
That was me.
It's all relative. It is all frame of mind. You're there, you're getting paid. This is your job. And a lot of the guys, most of the guys, I'll say this, not all of them, but most of the guys I've flown with who get just bent out of shape about this are the ones that have never had a job other than an airline job, because they've never had a real crappy job where they had to go to work and it felt like you were going to work.
Just miserable. Yeah.
Just terrible. You're getting treated like crap. You're not making any money. You have no future ahead of you, and they haven't had that struggle. So, all was it Rogan, I think, always says the hardest thing, you know, the worst thing that's ever happened to you is the worst thing that's ever happened to you, right? So to
Yeah.
them, this might be a big deal, but they have no frame of reference. And so when you could sit there, like, if I'm flying with a guy that I know is like that, who flew back in the day 30 years ago when it was way cheaper to fly, and they got their private, they got their tickets, now it's like 100 grand or something. Like it
That's
cost
cheap
them,
now.
and yeah, and it cost them 20 or 30 grand back in the day, right? And they were able to do it part-time on the side while they worked or something, right? And then they got their hours and they got hired at Great Lakes or something with 250 hours before that rule came in, because you could do that before the 1,500-hour rule. Some people don't know that. And so they never had, like, they just went 121 and went all the way. They never had to, do those other hard time building jobs. So when I'm flying with a guy like that, then it's a really good time for me to tell a story of when I had to struggle, and be like, dude, I slept in my car, literally slept in my car for 2 years in a hot hangar. So my car didn't get hailed on. I put the car in the hangar and slept in my car for 2 years while I was building my hours flying skydivers, because I was making no money at the time, but I
Yeah.
was flying my butt off, and like, it's those kind of things. And then they're like, wait, you did what? It's like, yeah, man, like the struggle was real. I didn't just get handed, mommy and daddy didn't send me to, name your expensive flight school or
Yep.
college and pay for it, where I got straight into a 121 carrier flying an Airbus or something like that. I didn't have that. I worked my butt off,
Yep.
sleeping on the floor, sleeping in cars, sleeping in dusty hangars up on in the packing rafter on a foam pad, flying 182s. I literally did that, and because I didn't want to be a CFI, like, but that's how I built my time. Part of the way I built my time. But anyways, getting back to the point. It's like, so it's just those kind of things you can interject when somebody's kind of losing their, and it takes their head out of that space where they're so focused on why they're angry at life, and you could be like, hey, dude, it could always be worse. Or if you're comfortable with them and you know them and they have, a backbone that can handle it, you tell them, hey, dude, you're kind of being a dick right now. Maybe simmer it down a little. And I'll tell them that if I'm on the fence about them being able to take it or not, I'll be like, hey, dude, might be time to simmer it down a little bit, just in a joking fashion. And then they go, oh, okay. And they get it, they get the hint. These are grown men. They should, or women, they
They
should be
should
able to
be able
handle it.
to.
Yeah. And the ones that can't, you know they can't. Like, if you have any social awareness.
I think one thing to add to that would be if you're on the ground and things are getting toxic where that person just can't control themselves as much, separate yourself from the situation for a minute. Like, let yourself kind of air out, I would say. Like, just say, hey, I need to go use the like, go to the restroom, or just,
Yeah.
there's ways you can do it, right? Where
Don't get
if
sucked in.
yeah, if there's no one on the jet bridge, be like, hey, I'm going to go take a call really quick or just something. And like, getting yourself out of that kind of, because you can feel the tension in the air,
Literally.
and I hate that feeling, and I'm like, "Okay, like, I don't wanna be affected by this, so let me literally just exit the situation for a couple minutes, reset, and then continue onward." Obviously, if this is happening middle of the flight or,
Mhm.
whatever. And then another thing I wanted to add too was when it comes to, some advice for captains I have would be, I've seen it where when the operation kinda goes badly, they try to be Superman and not rely on the person in the right seat at all. And they get very overwhelmed and task saturated. And I know that there's a lot of FOs who basically don't want to help at all. And they're like, hey,
Mhm.
man, that's not my job. But I also think being able to delegate as a team and bringing that other person, your other coworker involved and saying, hey, like these are all the different things going on. Can you help me with doing these different items? Because it's going to be a lot going on. And I don't want to make a mistake because you start having multiple different delegations going on or things going on. That's how open write ups happen. Just tons of different things, passenger counts being messed up. The list can go on. So it's really important to be able to utilize that other person because a lot of times for me, I will try to tell that person, I want to say almost subconsciously saying like, hey man, like here's, I just sent a dispatch note for a new release because we're going to be going over the hour or something like that. But then also say, I'm here available for anything else you need. And I don't see a lot of guys wanting to utilize that. And I think that's a mistake because for me, when I upgrade, I want to be able to use that other person that seat tremendously. Be like, hey, what do you think about these decisions that we're making? Obviously, you still want to be the leader in that realm, but like being able to utilize another professional is my biggest piece of advice and not just leaving it all to yourself. So,
Why do
yeah,
you think it is that they don't wanna utilize that or they don't appreciate it or whatever?
I think it, and these are just some thoughts. I don't necessarily know if this is true. It could be a cultural thing too, where, hey, the captain's responsible for these different things. And that's just kind of how I was a first officer. The captain always wanted to do those different things. And so I'm going to continue onward thinking that's the correct way to do it. And then also, think they just genuinely forget that that person is available. I don't think it's a lack of, I don't think it's them trying to not want to give up control. I just think that they are not really, I don't know, man. Like, I just feel like they're not used to working in a team environment when it comes to some of their obligations as a captain, if that makes
Mm,
sense. Does that
mm,
make, you know what I mean? When it comes to
mhm,
getting a
mhm,
flight ready, a lot of times the FO will go do the walk around. They'll load the box. They'll get the flight prepared on a fundamental level, like all the required steps. And the
mhm,
captain will look at more of a broader overview of what things that need to do, right?
hmm,
And so I think that they forget sometimes that the other person can go into a broader overview because a lot of times you'll set up the flight, everything's done, and then
mhm.
you're just sitting there, right?
Yeah,
And so your mental capacity is expanded while theirs is really kind of confined into multiple different tasks that are, I don't know, they're very saturated in those things. So, and they can fail to remember that that person is free and available. So it's really difficult
right.
from an FO side to deal with all these different personalities and how they like to command the airplane and then how to offer advice because some of the guys don't want it. And I'm like, okay, well, what do I do? Let them fail as I can kind of see the train running off the tracks, But if they don't want my help,
Sometimes.
what am I supposed to do? You know?
I mean, if it's not a safety of flight issue,
Yeah.
you know, and it's a tough this is
It's
a
really
good point.
tough.
Well, you bring up a good point, which is the biggest I always say this in a semi-joking but semi-serious fashion, and very few people say it anymore, but your job as first officer is not to swing gear. Your job as first officer is to make the captain look good, whatever that means. Because if you approach being a first officer with that mindset, everyone's gonna love flying with you. You're gonna be appreciated, whatever the case is. And for me, like, if I see the captain's having a bad day and I grease a landing and I go stand in the door and somebody says, "Oh, yeah, you did a great landing," I go, "That was all the captain." Like, I don't care. My ego doesn't need it.
Yeah, it doesn't
But
matter.
if that little comment, like, makes his day turn around, it makes my day turn around. If you approach that mindset of whatever I gotta do to make this guy or girl in the left seat look good, then that's what I'm gonna do today because that's my job. It's their airplane. The 4th bar is it's their airplane. Your job is to make them look good so they want to fly with you again. And if you approach that mindset, it changes how you approach your job as a first officer, and everybody wants to fly with you, and it makes their day better. Because when they see that their counterpart is trying to help them succeed, so like in your scenario, whatever that case may be. Now, and 10% of everyone's assholes. I say this all the time, right? So
Right.
there's going to be that 10% that no matter what you do, they're going to be dicks. And if they want to play that game, fine. Then back off. Let them make their mistakes. If it's not going to get you hurt or injured or damage the airplane or break any violations, and it's just going to make them look bad, we're going to find out, man. Like, sometimes you have to let them fail. It's like having kids, right? You're learning this as a dad. You have to
Let
let
them
them
get the
make their own
bruises, bro.
mistakes.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
you have to.
That's it. And unfortunately, most of these older guys that have that attitude just makes them more bitter because they don't understand why they keep screwing up. But that's another show.
Yeah. I can give some perspective on that too, where, I recently did one leg, very short flight, an hour flight with someone I've never flown with, 40-year age gap. And I guess, you say to make the captain look really good. I think the reciprocal thing for a captain, what I've figured out, you don't have to be my best friend, but I think from a human level, to show a little bit of interest in the other
Mm,
person is really important,
yeah,
because if your FO likes you, he's going to make sure that you don't mess up. And so when you don't have that rapport, he doesn't care about saving your butt or yeah.
100%.
So I was fine, 40-year age gap, and we basically, I don't even think he asked me my name the entire time. I mean, I probably spent 4 hours, 5 hours with him, and he
Mhm.
was coming off a long trip, but, like, we sat and watched drumming solos for 5 no, probably 45 minutes, and long story short, there's some guys out there that basically will not respond to questions that are asked and only dictate the conversation, and it's bizarre, but whatever. And so it left me kind of feeling being like, it is what it is. I'll just get through it, but I'm not going to go above and beyond for this guy or try to make a conversation, or really I'll do the bare minimum in terms of conversating with this guy, because he obviously does not care about my opinion or my thoughts. Does that make
Did
sense?
you Yeah, did you learn any lessons from flying with this guy?
No, no, I did not, because I've
Do you
flown with
ever
these
wanna
types of
be like
guys.
that guy?
Well, yeah, and as much as everyone's unique, there's only so many kind of very varieties of characteristics that people have in the airline industry, and I kind of can segment who this person is pretty quickly. And so it reminded me just someone who has nothing in common with me and that's, difficult for some people, right? If you have a 40-year age gap, and he was only been at the company for like a year and a half longer than me. And so what I thought was funny was, after we got done looking at all his different videos and doing exactly what he wanted to do, and again, not no questions to me, he pulls up the hydraulic page, or no, the engine page, and points to the bleeds. And he's like, okay, and he started quizzing me and being like, okay, what's that? And and I was like, hey, it's the engine bleed one and engine bleed
It's an
two.
older guy?
Yeah, yeah, he's like
Hmm.
63, 62 maybe. He goes on to basically find a really nuanced, like, kind of niche piece of information of what could happen and that people don't know about. And I think he was trying to be helpful. He's like, "Oh, I tell all the new FOs that." I'm like, Yeah, I've been here for 2 years, bro. You've only been here." And I told him, I was like, "Haven't you only been here for like a year longer than me?" He's like, "Well, I don't know." So, anyways,
So that's a guy with a tiny penis or a weak ego that he's trying to compensate for.
and we get going, and like we get above 10,000. He's like, "You realize that on the Airbus we have V1 and then a circle for VR and like a green triangle or a magenta triangle for rotate." And so we get above 10,000 and he says, "You know that VR is actually the circle, right?" And because they're like within a knot or two. And so he got all bent out of shape that I called it half a second late thinking I was the magenta triangle instead of the circle. And I was
Why
like,
was he looking at that? Isn't he supposed to be looking out the window at the center line?
I d- I d- I'm going to
10% of
say,
everyone's assholes, John.
yeah. Yeah. So my point is when it comes to being in those scenarios when you're with someone, and I think everyone is probably connected to this, especially the younger dudes flying with that when there's obviously a lack of leadership when it comes to being able to make common ground with those people. It was an hour flight. It's not a big deal. I can throw gear, but I'm not going to help you. Like going into Atlanta, he started slowing down maybe 50 miles out to 210 by himself. I'm not going to tell you, hey, man, that's not what the deal in Atlanta is because he goes and picks up premium all the time. So he barely even flies in Atlanta. And so, all of a
Sure.
sudden, center's like, "Hey, man, why are you going 210 right now? Like, did anyone tell you to slow down?" And I'm like, "Yep, yep, sorry, we're going to speed up." And then he goes again and starts to pull back to 180 when we're like 25 miles out. And I'm like, okay, I just, I'm not gonna try to argue with you because I'm not gonna try to have you explain to me and kind of degrade me. I'm gonna let you figure it out yourself.
This guy's
And
gonna go on
so
everyone's no-fly list real fast.
yeah. So I guess my point is I don't feel uncomfortable saying that to the group of listeners either because, at the end of the day, I did my job. I made sure there was no safety of flight issue.
Yeah, you didn't yeah.
But in the end of the
Yeah,
day,
he's
like,
the captain, he can fly the airplane however he wants, as
yeah,
long
I'm
as
not
he's
going to
doing it
tell them.
safely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so I guess that's my point of view is from the opposite side of things. When it comes to being a good captain, just show a bare minimum of respect for the other person. Ask them, what it's been like your time at the company or any. I mean, you guys have so many different common ground things you could connect with, but the least you could do is make sure you ask like 3 questions to that person. I've told you, Scott, the Ford method, family, what's it called, occupation,
Occupation,
um,
relationships, and dreams.
yeah,
Yeah.
recreation and dreams. Yeah.
Oh,
So, I
yeah,
mean, just go
recreation
through those
dreams.
4 questions and you're going to definitely be able to connect with someone and they're going to save your ass. I guarantee you.
Well, yeah, when it's just interesting. I mean, he's older, but he's still so new, right? So he's trying to compensate. That's what it comes down to. He's insecure and he's just trying to compensate with, and a lot of younger captains do the same thing because they don't have that life experience and they think they need to just, dictate control. I'm the boss. And it's nobody wants to fly with you. You're a prick. Like that's what it comes down to, you know? This is why no fly lists exist.
Yeah. So it definitely goes both ways and it gets exaggerated within IROPS going on.
Yes. Yeah, well, exactly, and that just exacerbates it, exactly, and that's what's been happening, which is the whole start of this conversation was how to deal with that stuff. So these are all things that might be minor underlying issues, but when you end up in IROPS, irregular operations, for whatever the reason, system falling apart, weather, maintenance issues, whatever the case is, these things just get blown out of proportion because it's easy for those people to snap in those scenarios, and all you can do is control your own little world. That's all you can control, and you can only control your reactions. I know that sounds cliche, but when you actually start trying that, you realize that is the only thing you can do, and for me, it's like, "All right, cool, we're delayed. Get up, go to the bathroom, get a cup of coffee, you know, text the girlfriend, do whatever, just I don't know, do I have a PC coming up? I guess I can go through my flashcards on that. I got a book. I could sit there, read my book, whatever the case is. Um, freaking a lot of the senior guys play Candy Crush for some reason. I'm
Yeah,
starting to
they
notice
do.
that.
Very
Do that.
boomer-esque.
Yeah, boomer-esque. I don't know, play your Candy Crush or
Yeah, man.
whatever, like, just figure out your thing, to kill
Yeah.
the time and make it tolerable. If you don't have the Cash app or Cash Clock app, there's several of them out there that really takes the stress out of the situation when basically it's a little app and you punch your hourly rate into it and it's got a clock and you hit start and it just runs a timer with every second that runs by, it runs up however much per hour you make, and you just get to watch yourself earning extra money if you're going over your guarantee at that point. It's pretty freaking sweet. So um, just a little quick episode on, frustrations, especially now that we're rolling into spring.
It's gonna get
Gonna get,
worse.
it's gonna get warm. Yep.
Uh,
Yeah, if anywhere in that, south and eastern, southeastern, even the eastern part of the country, as it starts to warm up here and we get those weather pattern changes with the spring storms, it's gonna get nasty. We had a pretty mild winter, like a very mild winter, I would say. I think I de-iced twice in the past 6 months. Crazy. I couldn't believe it. Sure, we might get some early spring, snowstorms. That's still possible, but that's about to be over. Now we're moving into thunderstorm season, and it's going to get ugly soon. So a lot of delays, a lot of frustrations, but best thing you can do is control your reaction and your emotions and try to make the whole situation better, at least in the cockpit environment. That's a big part of being a first officer is trying to learn how to deal with different people, and and that'll make you a better captain if you're good at it. So
to be
that's my
honestly,
that's yeah,
it will make you a better human. If you can
for
learn that
sure.
skill as an FO, you can take that in any kind of environment with your wife, your husband, anywhere. Anyone that's kind of having a bad day, you kind of know personalities and you can make sure that you're offering the correct emotional and support they need, I guess, because you deal
Yeah,
with it at work.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah. So we we hope you guys enjoyed that conversation, and let us know if there's anything else you would have wanted, any other thoughts you might have on that. Leave a
totally.
comment, discuss it in the comment section. If you got any subjects or topics you wish to for us to discuss, we're always open to listening and getting ideas. We've actually had many conversations on this podcast based off of listener recommendations. So, please like and subscribe. That helps our channels out the best. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Um, we have an Instagram page. We have an X account. We have
We have it all.
autopiloton.com's. Yep, autopiloton.com's the website. Autopilotonpodcast at gmail.com is our direct Gmail email address. So we appreciate everybody watching and listening, and we look forward to the next one. Thanks.
All right. See you guys.